What's on? Chris here from the inkslinger.co.uk with another exciting episode of the Word Slinger. Today what we're going to be talking about is there a possible Green Lantern coming to live action television? Also, a bit of a rundown on the titles that are going to be left standing after DC officially finishes its New 52 imprint. And then finally, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant about Star Trek 3. But first, a couple of months ago, remember seeing a photo flash up, I think on Twitter, and it basically had a picture of David Ramsey's character, John Diggle from Arrow, and he was dressed as Green Lantern. In fact, he was dressed as a Green Lantern, John Stewart, and essentially the caption said something along the lines of, what if, when John Diggle was in the army, his real name was actually John Stewart and Diggle was just a nickname, and then, oh my god, is he going to end up being Green Lantern? Well, obviously that was a piece of fan art, I'm pretty sure, and I kind of, like probably the rest of the internet, just went, yeah, that's fine. I sort of filed it under kind of cool. But then recently, and I'm talking really recently, probably in the last week or so, David Ramsey's actually come forward and he's been interviewed, and people are actually starting to ask him about this. And I think possibly because there's more of these pictures doing the rounds. There's a lot of people out there who want to think that David Ramsey's John Diggle is actually going to end up being John Stewart. For those of you who don't know, John Stewart is one of, I believe, 4 human Green Lanterns from the DC comic book series. Of course, Green Lantern was famously a bit of a cinema flop a couple of years ago with Ryan Reynolds playing the role of Hal Jordan, who was, I think, the original and probably one of the more famous Green Lanterns. John Stewart, it belongs to a very special generation of DC fans, though, because he was the Green Lantern in the Justice League cartoon from the 90s. Personally, I didn't really watch that. I used to watch Batman the Animated Series, and so I love that, and I am obviously a massive fan of Kevin Conroy, who does the voice of Batman in virtually everything, but never really got into the Justice League cartoon. I was always more of a Spider-Man fan when I was a kid, and so I'm not that bothered by John Stewart. But it would be kind of interesting to see if Diggle did end up being Green Lantern. Obviously, DC have announced that there's going to be a Green Lantern movie. I think it's 2020, so we've got a way to go for that. But the chances are they're probably going to try and sort of just breeze over the Ryan Reynolds film, because it didn't meet such a good critical response. I'm going to be slightly controversial now. I kind of liked it. I thought it was fun, you know. I thought it was entertaining. At the time, I didn't really know that much about the Green Lantern lore, so I found it kind of interesting to find out what's going on as the film progresses. But as far as I know, the dedicated Green Lantern fans just thought it was so that's obviously not going to happen anymore. Ryan Reynolds is clearly shipped over to Marvel now to reprise his role as Deadpool anyway. So yes, we've got a Green Lantern film coming out in 2020. The chances are it's probably not going to be Hal Jordan, although he is actually the Green Lantern in the Justice League comic book series that's running at the moment, and the chances are the DC slate of movies is going to represent the comic books that are out there. But what would happen? Would he go into TV land? Could we get a TV Green Lantern? Obviously, DC have shown a few months ago now that they're not really afraid to have the same character appearing by 2 different actors, because obviously the Flash TV series of Grant Gustin had only been on, I think, for 1 week, and they announced that they had cast a different guy to play the same character, Barry Allen, in the Flash movie. Is it a Flash movie, actually? Yeah, probably, but certainly in the Justice League parts 1 and 2. So they wouldn't have a problem with having 2 Green Lanterns out there, probably even just having 2 of the same Green Lanterns. But another thing that surfaced is, would it actually work within the realm of the TV series Arrow? David Ramsey, John Diggle himself, has said, well, actually, he's basically said, I know they're talking about it, something like that. People are talking about it, but Don't ask me. So if he knows anything, he's not saying anything. The chances are he possibly doesn't know, because it sounds like, from what I read on Twitter and in other online media, that actually the execs don't really talk that much with the people that's going actually in the series. Who actually knows? But so anyway, David Ramsey's himself said, I'm not entirely sure that Green Lantern would fit within the Arrow universe, and I kind of see that. Most of the characters that have come out of the Arrow TV series so far have been just vigilantes, aka anyway, you know, kind of Batman-esque. Green Arrow, of course, was basically a Batman rip-off / spin-off back in the day anyway. Obviously you've got the Flash, which spun out of Arrow, but he very quickly moved off to his own series, and they don't really encounter each other that often. I know the Flash is spinning out the Atom at the moment, probably because Marvel's got Ant-Man. That's the only reason I can think of. But the chances are they're probably going to spin that off as well. So maybe Arrow is actually just a massive like a womb of ideas at the moment, and DC is just using it to spin off things. Anyway, who actually knows? I kind of hope that they don't do it like that, because I think Arrow would lose a lot if Diggle moved over to his own TV series, but who actually knows? So next up, in my last episode I spoke very briefly about how DC Comics, back on DC again, DC have essentially said that after their big summer event series Convergence, they're basically ending the New 52 imprint. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. You can look at last week's episode for that. But what they're basically doing with this is they have decided to cancel a whole raft of their existing titles, and they're bringing in a whole host of new ones. So I've got a list up here. It's extensive, so I'm going to be looking away from the camera ever so slightly. So titles that are new coming into I was going to say New 52, but I guess just into DC's lineup are going to be Batman Beyond. I think Batman Beyond 2.0 was running as a weekly digital first series. And I've heard on the rumour mill, but it's not necessarily going to mean anything, that the new Batman Beyond comic book is going to be set in present day, whereas Batman Beyond is obviously supposed to be set sometime in the future. Not entirely sure when. But because I never was another cartoon I never really watched, but I know that it's set in the future. What else we got? We got Black Canary, Constantine the Hellblazer. That's the full title there. Constantine the Hellblazer, replacing the Just Constantine solo series, probably trying to attract some original Hellblazer readers perhaps back into the fold, because I think they've lost quite a few with the New 52 Constantine. We got Cyborg, I mentioned him last week, getting his own solo series for the first time. We've got Dark Universe spinning out of Justice League Dark. Green Lantern Lost Army, currently don't know too much about that. I think that's replacing Green Lantern Corps. Doomed, Earth 2 Society, again probably replacing the mainstream Earth 2 book. Dr. Fate spinning out of Earth 2. We've got Justice League of America, Justice League 3001 spinning out of Justice League 3000, I take it. Martian Manhunter's finally getting his own solo series 3 years down the line. We got Midnighter, who I've heard described on IGN as gay Batman, basically. We've got Mystic U, who knows what that's going to be. Omega Man, Prez, Red Hood, and Arsenal. Probably replacing Red Hood and the Outlaws. We've got Robin, Son of Batman, again, probably replacing the Batman and Robin comic. We've got Starfire and We Are Robin, which I think is going to be something about the various past Robins getting together, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. They're also going to be releasing 4 6-issue miniseries, and there's Batmite, Bizarro. That's going to be an interesting one, because Bizarro was completely rehashed for New 52 during the Forever Evil event, and is a completely different character, and I can't imagine that version of the character being popular in his own series, so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. Harley Quinn and Power Girl, very strange idea for a team up. And Section 8, again, no idea what that's going to be about either. Titles that have survived the chop, we've got Action Comics, of course, because this is the original one that was up to 800 and something issues when they decided to cancel it and go back to an issue 1 for New 52. Aquaman, they can't cancel that because he's going to be in a Justice League film. Batgirl, glad to see that's still going. Batman, Detective Comics, again, one of their originals. They couldn't really lose that. Batman/Superman, in case you weren't getting enough Batman out of Batman and Superman out of Action Comics. Catwoman, Deathstroke, The Flash, again, ties into the films. Gotham Academy, Gotham by Midnight, by all accounts, haven't had a very good readership, haven't been very popular. Popular is probably the wrong word to use. There's not been a lot of people reading them, but it's quite nice to see that they've gone away from their the tack that they've been doing more recently, which is like 5 issues down the line, not really selling, you're cut, and they're going to give it a chance because by all accounts, those books are supposedly very good. You've got Grayson, which is spinning out of Nightwing, following the Forever Evil. Green Arrow and Green Lantern, again, you've got the Justice League films and you've also got Arrow. You probably couldn't get rid of Green Arrow at the moment. He's probably bringing a lot of readers into the fold. Harley Quinn, so she's got her own solo series and that bizarre sounding team up with Power Girl. We've got Justice League, so that's carrying on. Lobo, Secret Six, Sinestro, New Suicide Squad, Superman, if you haven't had enough Superman from Action Comics and Superman Batman. Oh, and also, if that's not enough, Superman and Wonder Woman. You got the Teen Titans, you got Wonder Woman, in case there wasn't enough Wonder Woman before, and the Justice League United, which, if you have read any of the New 52, you will know, spun out of the Justice League of America series that lasted for, I think, 12 issues, and yet now they're bringing Justice League of America back with Justice League United and Justice League and a Justice League Dark renamed as Dark Universe. So 4 Justice Leagues? Really? Do we? Oh, and Justice League 3000. So 5 Justice Leagues. In case you did, that's almost enough for a whole league for each character in the Justice League. Anyway, and what's been cancelled? Arkham Manor, Batman and Robin, paving way for Robin, son of Batman. Batwoman, there's been a lot of sort of frustration on the net because Batwoman, I think, was DC's only openly gay superhero. And they're replacing her, not replacing, I guess, but they're going to have Midnighter as their openly gay superhero. Not sure why you can't have 2. Constantine, again, is being replaced with the Hellblazer. Earth 2 replaced with Earth 2 Society. Green Lantern Corps. Justice League Dark going to Dark Universe. Justice League 3000. Clarion. Infinity Man and the Forever People. Red Hood and the Outlaws going to Red Hood Arsenal. Red Lanterns. I'm kind of surprised that lasted as long as it did, personally. Secret Origin. Star Spangled War Stories. Supergirl. I'll get back to that. Swamp Thing, Trentisin, World's Finest, which I was quite enjoying that as a series, and then Aquaman and the others. I find it interesting how Swamp Thing is going, because that was basically, with the exception of Constantine, that's like their only big thing coming over from Vertigo that's left. So we've already seen virtually everything from the Wildstorm imprint gone. And now we've seen everything except for Constantine gone from the Vertigo imprint. Or that, I'm sure there's a couple of characters here and there, but like, why did you bother to merge these 3 imprints only to just stop everything from 2 of them and basically go back to normal DC? Who knows? The other thing that I find a bit interesting is the cancellation of the Supergirl comic. Now, I think Supergirl is actually part of the Justice League United. So I guess if she'll still be going in there. But there's going to be a Supergirl TV series, another DC TV series. What a shock! Being produced for CBS. They've just cast their Supergirl. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, as Melissa Benoist from Glee being cast as Supergirl, and I find it interesting how they don't plan to cash in on that with a comic, and unless that they will by bringing in another Supergirl comic, but in which case, what's the point in cancelling it in the first place? Basically. Okay, so that leads me to my last thing that I want to talk about, and that is something for once completely unrelated to DC Comics, which is probably quite nice, and it's the Star Trek 3 movie. And there's not really any brand new news on this, but I was mulling over this afternoon, as you do while I was doing some work, and I thought, actually, I was putting the pieces together in my head, and I felt like I wanted to have a little bit of a rant. For those of you who have not been keeping up with the news, obviously the Star Trek franchise was essentially rebooted by J.J. Abrams back in, I want to say, 2009. That seems like a very long time ago, but we'll stick with that, and I guess if that's wrong, I'll place a correction there. And then he produced Star Trek Into Darkness a couple of years later, and that was genuinely considered to be a bad move. Again, controversy. I quite like it. I know one friend of mine, if you even mention liking Star Trek Into Darkness, he will go mental. So yes, it upsets a lot of people, that film. But I kind of got over my gripe with JJ in the first Star Trek, because I came out of the cinema thinking, you have butchered everything that I loved about this franchise. And then I kind of, once I got my head around the fact that actually the existing franchise is still there in a parallel universe, I could live with it. Okay, I moved on. So Into Darkness, I kind of liked. But then he abandoned us. He abandoned us to go to Star Trek. Not Star Trek, to go to Star Wars. He came on board with Star Trek, made it into his own personal version of Star Wars, and then was offered Star Wars Episode 7 and went, ha! I would flip the bird, but this is a family show. But that's basically what he did. He jumped ship. He went over to Star Wars. And he's going to ruin that. I mean, look, a lightsaber with... Anyway, whatever. So then suddenly we hear that Robert Orci, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who wrote Star Trek Into Darkness, and I think also Star Trek, or certainly co-wrote Into Darkness, is on board to write and direct Star Trek 3. Okay, well, a lot of people didn't like Into Darkness, so is that such a good idea? And also, he's never directed a film before, so is that such a good idea? And then there was stories banding around the internet about how they were going to do even more time travel and get even more old Leonard Nimoy Spock. And then also, let's get William Shatner. Let's forget that he's dead in the traditional continuity. Okay, and let's bring him on board, which was just like the worst idea. If anyone is still seriously considering doing that, just stop right now. But then suddenly he's like, actually, I'm not going to direct it anymore. Fair enough. Oh, and I'm also not going to write it anymore. What? He's just producing it now. Okay, well, where did that come from? Probably pushed. But then there's about 5 directors they're considering, and guess what happened? Jonathan Frakes comes on board. He doesn't actually come on board. He basically publicly went out there and said, hey, I'll direct this. Jonathan Frakes, if you don't know, played Commander Riker in Star Trek The Next Generation, and also the Star Trek films First Contact, Insurrection, oh, this is definitely testing me now, Generations, and Nemesis, everyone's favourite. And he's come on board and said, I'll direct it. He directed First Contact, which is arguably the best Star Trek film, apart from the one with the whales. And like, he was just completely ignored. No, they've got Justin Lin, who directed a few of the Fast and Furious films. Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, no, fair enough. I haven't seen them. I know they make tons of money, which is probably why they've done it. And I suppose actually starships are fast as well. I don't have too much of a problem with him. And we got someone called Doug Jung now writing the script. Even though Robert Orci supposedly had a script for well over a year. But to be fair, if this Jung guy has written something that doesn't involve William Shatner, and actually also Leonard Nimoy, that's cool. He can write whatever he wants. So he's on board to write, and then suddenly we've got Simon Pegg is co-writing. Don't get me wrong, I really like Simon Pegg. I've been with Simon Pegg since he was in a sketch show called Big Train, way back when I was a kid, and he was presumably quite young as well, because I don't think we're that different age. I've been with him from there. I love Spaced. I love Shaun of the Dead. I didn't actually like Hot Fuzz, but we'll pass that. I like his work. Okay, I respect him. I don't think I want him writing a Star Trek film. I don't think I want him writing the next Star Trek film, because he is a comedy writer. I'll be honest, I don't know of anything that he's written that is a serious screenplay. Maybe there's loads of it, but I really don't want him writing Star Trek 3. I basically think that this film is doomed. Now, Paramount is planning on releasing it in July of 2016, because Star Trek is going to have its 50th anniversary on the 8th of September 2016. And so they want it released so that presumably they can market around the 50th anniversary and then probably make masses of DVD sales from 8th of September release. I guess, maybe. Maybe that's just being pessimistic. I don't know. Considering that it took JJ like 2.5 years to make each of the other Star Trek films, can they really make it in... It's not even 18 months now. It's 16 months. And they haven't even written it. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I worry that this film is dead in the water. But you never know. Maybe we'll come back and revisit this episode in 16 months' time, and I'll cut to a clip of me, and I'll go like this. We'll do a swipe, and then we'll swipe back, and then I'll say, haha, I was wrong. That film was great. Or it might be rubbish. Anyway, that's enough of a rant. You remember last week I decided to start a feature, What Am I Reading at the Moment, where I'd show you about some graphic novel that I was reading, and I haven't read one this week, so I can't do that feature anymore. But what I can do is, I suppose I can mention that I've just started I've been replaying, it's still DC, I'm really sorry about this, because I was totally all about Marvel back in a couple of years ago. I'm replaying Batman Arkham Asylum. I've been just really feeling like playing that for quite a long time. I didn't get into Arkham City at all, and I never bothered with Arkham Origins, because I've heard that it's rubbish. But again, I haven't played it, so who knows. I started playing it, and just the immersion. What a game. So if you have Batman Arkham Asylum, if you own that game, I suggest you go and load it up now and give it a play, because you'll find that you still love it as much as you did. Anyway, that is quite enough from me. I am signing off. Check it.